Hi, and thanks for checking out this video. I'm going to show you what I like to do after I download a new distribution, and this one in particular is Pop! OS 22.04. So let's just pretend you already installed Pop! OS, and if you haven't already, it's a very easy process, and there's plenty of documentation and videos online on how to do that. But now that I have a fresh install of Pop! OS, small disclaimer, I am remoted into my laptop because that way I can record the screen of the remote session with my desktop. And you can see up here, there's this little no machine icon. That's the remote software I use and prefer in Linux and Windows as well. But I'm using that to remote into the system. So you don't have to count that as something you need to do on your machine unless you want to try it out, which of course I do recommend it. The very first thing I do on any Linux system after installing it is, of course, update the system and check for the latest ones, that is. What you can do is click on the terminal. You should have it down here on the bar. And when you click on that, you can type in sudo space apt update and then 2 ampersands and then sudo apt upgrade. It's basically just chaining 2 commands together. And you just hit enter, type in your password, and it's going to either ask yes, if there's packages to update, it'll ask you to hit Y or N. In this case, I've already updated it, so you can see that it's now done. And the system is completely up to date. Now that the system is fully up to date, the next thing I like to do is, before installing any other software, I like to take a snapshot. And that is a simple backup of my desktop. But it does not come with my favorite backup tool, which is called Timeshift. So I recommend trying this tool out. I wouldn't call it a, all-in-one backup solution because it's backing up to your own drive. So if your drive fails, you're out of luck. But I think it's a great backup and recovery solution locally, where if you make a change that breaks your machine, you can just revert very easily. So what I do is I open the Pop Shop and I click this icon down here. Think of it as like your app store, right? And it's very nice and polished in Pop! OS. They've done a really amazing job. So what I do is in the search box, type in Timeshift, and there it is. And I just click on install, type in my password. And the cool thing about this current version of Pop! OS is it has progress bars built into the buttons. It's very, very slick. And you can see that it's now installed, and I click open. And since it's a system level program, it does need access, admin access, to make a backup of your system. So you're going to be prompted to type in your password when you open Timeshift. And that's going to happen anytime you open it. For the backup or snapshot type, I recommend just keeping rsync selected and clicking next. And now this is going to show you which drive you're going to back up to, and it's probably going to be the drive that you're on currently using. And here, this is up to you what you want to click on as far as the frequency of backups, but I recommend you click next. I like to do weekly, just because I don't want to have too many backups. A lot of people might want to do daily. It's up to you. But I like to keep 3 backups on hand at all times and back up weekly. So that's what I have selected. Now I click next, and then I click next, and it just kind of gives you a summary, and you click finish. And that's it. They're scheduled. Now, if you want to, you can just click create, and it will make that first backup for you. It takes a few minutes usually, and it's very simple. So then if I were to go on my system and install something that, kind of breaks the configuration, I can just go to one of those snapshots and roll back. The next thing I like to do is just change the appearance of the desktop and the monitor layout to the way I like it. And you could start by just right-clicking on the desktop and going to Display Settings. You want to start where your monitor is basically, and just look and make sure you have the right resolution set up. So if you have a 1080p monitor, it's going to generally have a resolution of 1920 by 1080. That's most 1080p monitors. Now, if you have multiple monitors, such as a 4K monitor and then some 1080p monitors, you're probably going to have a difficult time getting it exactly the way you like it in a Linux desktop environment, at least as of 2022. There are some issues with scaling and, fractional scaling and just things being perfect in that aspect across different applications. Now, in Linux, if you have just one screen or multiple monitors with the same resolution, you generally won't run into any issues. This is across multiple distributions. This is not just Pop! OS. So you will have an easier time if you have monitors with the same resolution or just one high quality monitor. You'll be fine. And you won't have to mess with any of this high DPI stuff generally. Now, something else you want to look at after you get that all squared away is going up to the desktop area. And that's going to be like customizations such as the super key action. Now, the super key, people in Windows might refer to it as the Windows key, but it's commonly referred to as the super key when you're in Linux. And when you press that, you can get different actions. I tend to keep it at the default, which is just the launcher. Now, if you change that, you can have it activate the workspaces or the applications. But if you just keep it at launcher, it kind of gives you the same behavior that you'd have in Windows, where you can just start typing something to search for a file or launch an application. I find it's just easier to stick with that default. So what does the launcher look like? Well, let's just hit the Windows button. It just brings up this little pop-up box, and you can just start typing what you'd like to search for. Let's try apps. And we'll do app, and then boom, you got everything that's got the word app in it. Pop Shop even comes up. It works really well. It's like it almost reads my mind. And then I can just, go install some apps. So I can click on Pop Shop, and there it launches. And this is running on fairly old hardware, maybe a 5 or so year old laptop of mine. And it runs just like a brand new machine. Runs very well. Much better than Windows 10 in my opinion, and even Mac OS. Another area you will want to visit is the dock settings. And when you first launch Pop! OS and log in, it will ask you the question about how you want the dock size to look. Now, you've probably already done that, but you can always go back here and change it to the way you like it. Now, right here, extend dock to the edges of the screen. You will see it goes all the way across. I like to have it just only as wide as it's needed to show the icons. But then you also have plenty of other options. You can even disable the dock. Now, I don't see why you'd want to do that, especially if you're a newer user like myself, and I would keep that on. You can show applications in the dock. You can turn that off to just hide applications icon, which if you click this little matrix, it shows you the applications on the computer. And you can, even turn off showing mounted drives. It's really nice and it's simple. The way they break it down is just so clean and perfect. I wish Windows was this clean. And you can change the position of the dock on the computer. You can do it along the left side of the screen. Maybe you like that Ubuntu look. I think that's pretty nice. I like it on that side, but I tend to keep it on the bottom as of late. Something that you will also want to visit is under desktop options. If you scroll down to the bottom, you'll see Windows controls. Well, I tend to want the maximize button. I like that button, so I can turn that on. Now, this is something similar to what you'd get in GNOME tweaks that you have to use on Ubuntu or any other GNOME stock install, but they included that tweak here, and it's really neat that you can just turn it on out of the box. I love it. So I now have a minimize and a maximize button. If you don't want either of them, you can turn them both off. But again, look how easy that is to turn them on. The last area of this box that I'll cover is the appearance. Everybody loves dark mode nowadays. I personally have been trying to stay away from it a little bit more because the tutorials I'm doing, I've gotten feedback from users where they say, maybe try doing it with the light mode on. It's easier to see when you're following a tutorial. However, I do like dark mode in general, and I think it's really cool, and they make it really easy to change everything into dark mode, and it's just very, very simple. So you have light or dark mode, and you can see how quickly I can change back. I pretty much implied I wouldn't cover the workspaces area, but I should just touch on it for a second. And pretty much workspaces, you can think of it as virtual desktops, whatever you want to call it. I just keep it with the default options, and that is dynamic workspaces, basically meaning you won't have a ton of virtual desktops appearing all cluttered on your screen. They'll just remove themselves when they're empty. You can try it out if you want, just to see how a virtual desktop works by pressing Control and then the super key or the window key, whatever you want to call it, the meta key, they have different names for it. So you hold Control, window key, press down, and you can see it'll switch to another desktop, if you will. I press up while I'm holding those just to go back, and then that's my other desktop. You can tinker around with this, and I recommend just doing it the way you like it. There's no better way. So you can open up different applications on your different virtual desktops if you get a little bit of a cluttered workspace and you want to space things out a little more. All right, now that I got everything more or less tweaked the way I like it, I just start installing applications. So I can close this window and I can head on over to the terminal or the Pop Shop. Let's do it from the terminal because Linux tends to shine from the terminal. You can do anything in the terminal basically in Linux. And we're going to install an app by typing sudo apt space, spaces between every word, sudo space apt space install space, and then the name of the application you'd like to install. We're going to do VLC Media Player, so it's just called VLC. You do your password when it prompts you. And it's going to ask you if you want it to download all the files. You just hit yes. And watch how fast this goes. I don't even have to pause the video. Downloads the package from the internet, runs the installer for you, cleans up the install. You don't have to run a setup file like you do in Windows. It's done. And you can go over to your applications and you'll see it there. It's ready to launch. There's no way in hell I could do it that fast in Windows. Even with the Chocolatey or any command line, it's still faster in Linux. So we can now do the next app. Or you can just hit up and then erase the last command you typed in for the app. And let's try GIMP. GIMP is a fantastic photo editor. Press Y, press enter, and it's going to download it, install it. And while it's installing it, you could try to think of the next app you want to install because it's going to be done pretty quickly. Let's go for Synaptic Package Manager. That's a package manager that I love on Debian-based Linux distributions. You can just basically find any package, add or remove it very quickly. So let's do the up arrow and then remove that last command, GIMP, and type in Synaptic. Press enter, Y, enter, and it is installed faster than you can think about it. You can go here to your apps and you will see everything that you just installed. There's Synaptic Package Manager. Let's run it. I'll show you what I like about it. In Synaptic Package Manager, it will give you an overview of how many packages it has available from its repositories. And right here you can see there are 66,917 packages. Now, that's not necessarily standalone applications. It could be the dependencies that are required to make them run, but you can find just about anything here. You can search for, let's look for Doom, and you can find, maybe open source remakes of Doom, different engines, not the actual licensed game, but you can find just about anything. Let's look up, what's another popular app? How about Slack? Let's see if Slack shows up in here. Slack. Configuration Management Programs. Maybe that's not the same one. Slack Desktop. There it is. And you can go to Get Screenshot. Let's see if it pulls one, actually. No, that did not do it. So here's where you might want to go back to the Pop Shop. Let's type in Slack there and see if it has a polished... There it is. Chat with your team. So as you can see, they've done a lot of work to clean this up and make it very easy to install apps. And they give you the choice to do a FlatHub, Flatpak, or a Pop! OS Deb. Generally, a Flatpak is going to just work out of the box, but it's going to take up a lot more space because it's a containerized version. But it won't bring down your system if you install a bad file or something, or dependency that breaks something with your computer. Flatpaks are really cool and are just makes it easier to keep your system stable. And when you install them for the first time, they generally take a little bit longer to launch the first time, but after that point, they launch normally. Let's look for one more app before we end this, and we'll install it. Let's try, let's look up VLC again, just to show you that there is usually a duplicate version that will show up, and that usually means it's the Flatpak version. And you can see right here, I have this version installed, but if we go here, this is probably the Flatpak version, even though, does it tell you under here? Let's see. Well, that's a little weird, but you get the idea. Let's install a game. I like this game called Frozen Bubble that I used to play, I don't know, over 10 years ago, I think. Let's see if it comes up. There it is, Frozen Bubble. So you can see there's two listings of it. And I'm going to assume that the version that's 755 megabytes is the Flatpak. Let's go to the other version here. 45 megabytes. Which version do you think I'm going to pick in this case? I'm going to pick this smaller version, yes. And we install it. You see the progress meter that I talked about earlier. And then you click open. and it launches. Now, keep in mind I'm in a remote session, so this is not going to transfer all the sound that I'm hearing from the actual laptop itself. Thanks a lot for watching. If you have any questions, please comment below. Please subscribe to the channel. I really appreciate it. Thanks a lot.